All right. Good morning and welcome everybody to the Never Stop Healing podcast. This is your host of the day, Cade Archibald, and I am joined by none other than Regan Archibald. Regan, how you doing this morning?
Doing great.
Awesome. Well, we got some really cool stuff we're going to be diving into today and really excited about that. Before we dive in, want to cover a few items, mostly on our hack last night. So we had our health accelerator challenges last night, and our challenge. So if you're first of all, if you're not a member of that community, go to acueastwest.com/hack. That's HAC. That's where you can learn about our health accelerator community. This is an amazing group of people that are just doing some really cool stuff with their health and just their health's getting accelerated. So it's a really cool, fun community. Many of you that are on here live are a part of that community. Thank you for your involvement there. Our challenge last night was 20 minutes of exercise and trying out the Mito sprints.
Yeah, so every 4 minutes is where you bust out into a 5-second all-out sprint. And Andy this morning, if you're not in our Signal group, Andy actually had this really cool thing where she talked about doing, instead of jumping jacks, they're called star jumps.
Yeah.
And so she did 5 seconds of star jumps in between some of her other workouts. I did mine on the Peloton, which was great. So how many of you have already done your challenge today who heard it last night?
Nice. Awesome.
Allison did. Well done, Allison. Cool.
Yeah. So I'm working on open up the chat box so you guys can see that. Awesome. So now you can type into the chat box as well. So everybody, make sure you're commenting in the chat box now. We had a couple hands raised, but chat box was disabled. Now it is enabled, so we're good to go. Well, I'm excited about today's topic. We're going to be talking about peptides for the brain and
pain and some hormones too today.
Awesome. Well, that just sounds like a recipe for some really cool stuff. Brain hormone let's dive in, Regan.
Okay, so I'm going to share with you guys, for those of you who are watching, I'm going to share with you a great, this is from the book, The Slight Edge. And I've talked about this book for quite a while because I think it's something that we need to come back and recognize is there's certain things in life that are really easy to do. And if you think about the easy things to do that are hard in the long run, what are those choices that you make right now that are easy? And that could be, like fast food, pulling into a fast food drive-through and just grabbing your food and eating it because it was easy and convenient. The other thing, it's easier to watch Netflix than it is to do something physical. And I mentioned this when I got home from St. George. I was like tired, and I just was like, maybe I'll watch Netflix and chill. And I changed my mind. I was like, you know what? I should probably get a better workout. And so I went downstairs and I did these EMOM workouts, and I did squats and 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off for 10 minutes. And it just changed my entire energy. And so yes, it would have been easier to sit down and turn on the TV and watch a game or whatever. But in the long run, that's actually harder because our bodies start to deteriorate if we're not, putting the right food into our systems, if we're not exercising. It's easy to place blame, and it's harder to, easier in the moment. But then in the long run, if we never take full responsibility over our actions and our choices, then it catches up to us in the long run. And this is a diagram, and you can see where it's the things that create our lifestyle are our philosophy, and then our philosophy or our beliefs influence our attitude, and then our attitude is what creates the actions and the results in our life. And so our lifestyle is branched out into our finances, our health, our business, our personal development, and our relationship. And so it's very interesting because in the book, The Slight Edge, you can see just these little nuances in life where, if you spend a good portion of 10 years just doing what's uncomfortable and doing that early on, it becomes comfortable later on. And so it's like, Cade, you're working out this morning, and Cade and I worked out together, but it would have been really uncomfortable for you to bench press. Cade is benching like 250 pounds today. He's a beast, but it would have been uncomfortable for you to do that if you hadn't worked on your strength, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it seemed like you enjoyed the activity of pressing an enormous amount of weight off your chest multiple times, probably 100 times this morning, right?
Yeah, it felt great. It was fun.
Yeah, and so that's the cool thing that you did is now you go back to when you first started benching, and remember how heavy just the 45-pound bar felt when you're pushing that off your chest?
Oh yeah, I remember well, like first time trying to bench press, and you got the bar maybe like 5s on there, and you just it's like a struggle just to get that thing up.
Yeah, now it's like, okay, well, you've done the work, and so now it's like comfortable, and you can put more weight on there, and so it's pretty cool as you start seeing that. But in health, what happens is it's these simple disciplines that you make consistently over time is what yields the biggest result. And so today, as we start talking about the things that I think will move the needle, it's these little things that create this massive momentum in your health. That's really what we're going to focus on, because the things that are easy not to do, those are simple errors in judgment made over time where you think, well, I'm going to take a day off, or, I think I'm entitled to, this dessert, or I'm entitled to have a day where I can just veg and it's okay, and yes, it's okay to express emotions and feelings. I'm not saying be a robot, and that's not what the author was saying in The Slight Edge. Olson's his name, but really, it's like, but don't blame other people, other things. Don't blame your circumstance on where you're at in life. Take action and start saying, okay, what do I want to do differently? And this is where once you take full responsibility for your health, that's when you can really make the most magic happen. And so in our program, I was mentioning this to a patient yesterday. I said, look, here's who we work best with. We want to make your next decade your best decade. And in order to do that, that means, we want to work with people who put their health as their number one priority, people who are saying, hey, I want to optimize things. I don't want to just be healthy from a conventional perspective. I want to be healthy from like an unreasonable perspective. I want outsized returns on what I'm doing for my health. I want to have this maximum benefit in the next 10 years. The other thing that we're making sure that isn't happening is there's no death by surprises. And so this means there's got to be deeper testing that happens to create a foundation for your life. And those tests can be, functional blood chemistry. And so if you haven't ran your functional blood chemistry panel, do not hesitate. That needs to be done every 6 months minimum. And it's crazy what can show up even when patients have been living, quote unquote, a healthy lifestyle, and probably are, but the things that pop up are, there can be surprises that happen along the way. And so get your blood work done. And Cade, you posted that in the chat box. Just text or call 801-582-2011, and we're happy to help get that coordinated for you. But don't hesitate on that. If you have friends, family, loved ones, what a great gift you could give them is blood review. Say, hey, go meet with these guys.
Yeah, that's probably one of the best gifts that you could give one of your loved ones. And I'm just throwing this out there right now. We'll do $100 off on our blood reviews if you're purchasing that as a gift or anything like that. Just reference the podcast. $100 off for blood reviews till Christmas. That's a gift I wanted to give to them. Hopefully you're not offended by that, Regan.
No, that I think that's awesome. Cool.
Yeah, let's get some help for whether it's you listeners right now or you want to get that for someone as a gift. I think that would be fantastic. It includes your functional blood chemistry as well as a full review with one of our blood chemistry experts. So yeah, it's like fantastic. Great way to get started on the right track.
Love it. Yeah, look at everything, because one of the things, especially for men, is if you look at your hormones, and this is what's included in the functional blood chemistry, is we'll look at hormones, we'll look at DHEA, we'll look at testosterone, estrogen, estradiol. I look at labs every single day. I'm looking at several different lab markers. And one of the things that I find is as we age, especially men, our testosterone decreases by almost 50% by the age of 50. And that creates a huge risk for cardiovascular problems. It can create insomnia, it can create psychological problems, increased heart disease, muscle mass reduction. It creates where we get more abdominal fat. So it can impact your sex drive. So it's pretty darn dangerous, the low levels. But then on the flip side, if you're on testosterone replacement, you got to be really careful, because a lot of clinics are just popping up and prescribing testosterone just ad nauseum. Just if your levels are a tiny bit off, and they'll crank it up too high, which can create a lot of like mental kind of psychiatric issues. It can create hyperthyroidism, which then goes to hypothyroidism. If your ferritin levels are high and your hematocrit, you could have significant issues with clotting, and a blood clot can create a stroke. You can even have kidney and liver disorders. So make sure on, these labs are really critical, because no matter where you're at, you can start to see what's really important. And then we also see where estradiol starts being eaten up by testosterone. And that creates this whole other environment. It's called andropause, similar to when women go through menopause. Same thing is, we look at the follicular stimulating hormones and the luteinizing hormones, but a lot of the symptoms start showing up in men with andropause, where they have a decreased motivation, kind of that grumpy man syndrome, the lack of focus, muscle loss. We see that quite frequently. Even, erectile dysfunction starts showing up, low energy, insomnia, just not a fun place to be. So getting your blood drawn can help stave off some really significant issues that can start showing up. And we'll look at liver function, kidney function, hydration. We'll give you a nutritional protocol, get your macros lined up, but it really leads into that core philosophy we have is, no death by surprises. Don't die by neglect. Who was it that said that? Was Diane Trapp, Cade? I don't know if you remember in the hack that we had, no death by neglect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great concept. But yeah, that's really what a lot of the, you stack on all these core morbidities as you age, and you get sicker and sicker and sicker, and maybe you technically die of old age, but it's death by neglect is ultimately what it is.
Yeah, where you could either you're living what's called premature mortality, where you're walking around with chronic diseases that and it gets younger and younger, where people are walking around with those, where you're half dead, but you never quite feel like yourself. that can be a kind of a death by neglect, or it's, that crazy thing that happens where you end up with cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and because you neglected your health too long. And I think we all know of someone who's done that. But let's kind of circle back to some of the the hormones a little bit. And I want to talk about a peptide called kispectin. So it's kispectin, and I'll share my screen because I know we've got Linda on here, and I hope she can see this. This helps more with a visual. But in a study in 2017, what was shown is that when kispectin was low in men, it was also related to infertility or low sperm counts. And interestingly enough, testosterone is a direct correlation to, there's some correlation to normal levels of testosterone, meaning normal levels of sperm count. And so what they found with kispectin, they said, well, it's naturally one of the stimulating pathways to help not only with men who have fertility issues, but also with women. And you can now use kispectin as a support for healthy estrogen levels, healthy progesterone, and healthy testosterone without using a hormone. So kispectin is a great way of stimulating your follicular stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormones. And it can trigger a nice response in your reproductive system just by triggering a pathway in the brain so that you actually can start producing hormones on your own. And so this is one of our big goals is how can we optimize female hormones and male hormones without replacing them. And in some cases we need to, and that's not a problem if you do it the right way. But yes, with kispectin, it's great. And then it looks like we had a question come in. Hey, Diane, speaking of death by neglect, Diane gave us that term. Thanks again for that. Have you heard of pellets for replacement hormones? Absolutely. Yeah, those pellets, those troches, you can implant those in your glute, and they'll last for about 3 months. And that can be one way of doing it, and it's so much better than what it used to be, because man, historically when those things would be implanted, the dosing couldn't be titrated properly, and so we had a lot of fallout from it. But now the technology is better, so that can be certainly an alternative to it. Once again, our goal is if we can go upstream and stimulate the pathways that allow your body to make progesterone and estrogen on its own, that's going to be a much more, in my opinion, it's a safer and more sustainable route. But yes, it's pellets can be very helpful if you're working with the right team who knows how to do it. So, but kispectin would be something I'd say, hey, I would try this first. Or try gonadorelin, and gonadorelin is something that I've used for years off and on. But gonadorelin also stimulates luteinizing and follicular stimulating hormone. So it's another way of getting ovarian stimulation or testicular stimulation that not only helps fertility, but it also can be a great way to help balance your hormones. Because remember, as we age, by the age of about 40, the universe just wants to recycle us. It wants us out of the game. It's saying, hey, your reproductive prime is over, and so move on, and we're going to let someone else come in your place. But these days we're saying, hey, no, we want to live to be like 120 or 200 or however old you want to live to be. But in order to live really fully and to experience this, dying at an old age, dying young at an old age, well, you want to work on these hormone pathways. And so kispectin and gonadorelin are a couple of great peptides that can do that. So, so Cade, on that front, you've seen a lot. Have you used gonadorelin or kispectin at all?
Those are two that I have not.
Okay. Yeah, and
Tried a lot of different ones.
yeah, you're young, so it might not be necessary, but man, you could imagine couples who are dealing with infertility, that not only does that, put a hyper strain on them, but as a relationship, but also yeah, we've seen phenomenal things happen that where they conceive, even though they think they're set up for in vitro. This is a great thing to do before you enter into the in vitro pathway.
Yeah, and I think it's, you look at in vitro can be a game changer for a lot of people, but it's it's a lot of work that goes into that and a lot of cost. So that's a great alternative and option to try out there.
Yes. So let's chat about the brain a little bit. So I think the brain is, if you look at some of the things you can do to influence your brain, it's like, well, optimizing your hormones is really important, and any female will tell you when estrogen levels drop, you're going to not feel like yourself. You're going to, your nervous system is not going to function. It has an impact on your gut. There's so many different things that occur in the brain when our hormones are optimized. And the same with men. When men don't have proper testosterone levels, we get irritable and depressed, and we lack motivation. There's no meaning in life. There's no drive, and it's that conflict and the tension in life. That's like that yin yang balance, but it's that tension between those two energy fields. That's what creates a lot of that meaning in life. And without the hormones there, we kind of lose that edge, and it's an interesting process. But one of the things that you can do to make sure that you always have that edge and you have the ability to keep your brain sharp, keep your cognitive health where it needs to be, is influence this pathway called BDNF. And BDNF is really important because it's influenced by the HPA axis, and these are kind of acronyms, but it's brain-derived neurotropic factors. So the BDNF is what allows your brain to be plastic and to change and to adapt, and it's one of the most powerful influencers over our brain's health. And so how quick can you recover? And it's even when we sleep at night, our brains are organizing and creating these long-term memories from the day before and kind of processing information. But it's the BDNF that allows that information to get properly stored and for you to be able to call on that in the future. But it also is what helps correct our brain from damage from influence. But then the HPA axis is the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal, and that's the stress axis that can turn off your rest and digest function and turns on the fight or flight. So the HPA axis is your direct pathway to the amygdala. And so one of the things you look at when it comes to hormones is if your body's in this constant state of hyper stress or distress, where that tension just becomes overwhelming in life, then that's where the HPA axis needs to be recalibrated. And it's why we start every single patient in that 60-day reset. When they go through that process, we find that they feel just a sense of relief finally from the stress that they've had in their nervous system. So today we'll talk about a couple of things that you can do to really influence your HPA axis. But one of the things that we find is so critical is using like ganadorelin or kispectin. These are very powerful peptides to open up those pathways so that your body can start creating the hormones that you need. But then now that you've done that, looking at these brain-derived neurotropic factors is really important for neuroplasticity. People with Alzheimer's disease have been shown to have significantly lower levels of BDNF than those who don't. This was a study that, we've known about this since 2008, a study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, when BDNF levels are high, acquiring new knowledge is effortless. You'll have better memory retention. You can learn things faster. The way you can stimulate this is getting exercise, getting out in the sunlight. And BDNF levels at higher levels can be a great natural antidepressant. So low BDNF, you're going to have dementia, depression, mood swings, brain fog. So these are all things that happen. So exercise is a great way to increase BDNF. One of the other things is through IGF-1. And Cade, did you take any of my peptides this morning, the injections, the IGF-1?
No, I just got in the zone. I just took the Selank, the nasal, so I didn't do any of the injectables. I forgot my peptides at home. And so I was staying at Reagan's house this evening just to clue everyone in. And I've been taking tesofensin. Really been liking that. And yeah, I forgot my capsules. So I was asking Reagan if he had any. He did not.
That was a couple phases ago on tesofensin. What's been your experience with it?
I'm on like week 1. I just recently got it. So, but yeah, I'm definitely noticing some strength increase. Like as far as I think I was telling you this morning, I put up more weight and benched more than I have probably since, like, I actually was like doing a lot of heavy lifting probably 10 or 15 years ago. And so, yeah, that was fun.
Tesofensin, that's awesome. Yeah, because that works on the epinephrine pathway, which can help with strength, but dopamine, serotonin. Yeah, that's great. But IGF-1, if you, for those of you who've used that peptide, it's the gateway to BDNF. And so you need IGF-1, which is insulin-like growth factor, and to turn on the gene that allows you to express BDNF. So it's really powerful. And I've said for years, like IGF-1 has always been one of my favorite nootropic peptides. And it gets a bad rap because people are like, whoa, with high levels of IGF-1, you're going to, express cancer and tumors. But actually IGF-1 is really powerful because your body, if you're doing a 12-hour fast at night, or if you're exercising, you are turning off that mTOR pathway and turning on autophagy. And so I think people kind of misuse, there's a misuse of and kind of a villainization. It's an all or nothing on these peptide pathways. And really, when you're using exogenous peptides, if it's already turned on and expressed your IGF-1 pathways, then adding more in, your body will just get rid of what it doesn't need for the most part. And so, but what I found is using IGF-1, especially when I first started using it about 4 years ago, I noticed such a dramatic improvement in my physical fitness, in my proprioception, and then in my brain and cognitive function. And so I still cycle on and cycle off of it. And it's just an amazing peptide. And it has been shown to activate the regulation of the BDNF gene. And so then you're going to get better neuronal growth. You're going to get better differentiation of neurons. And the other thing that you'll find is you'll have less stress, because stress also induces changes in BDNF. So if you have like chronic projects that are just driving you crazy, or psychological oppression like anxiety and fear, then you're going to suppress some of the BDNF excretion. And so some of the studies they've done is they said, well, what will cause an increase in BDNF? They said, well, IGF-1 will do that. How do you increase IGF-1? And this was a study published in the Environmental Health and Preventative Medicine. This article was 2017. And what they found is a single 20 to 30 minutes of moderate intensity exercise, 50 to 60% max, does appear to optimize your results. Acute exercise, like your high intensity interval trainings, that also helps support motor skill and cognitive training. And then even at Go Wellness, Dr. Eckel, a few years ago, he gave this beautiful presentation on if you want a 500% increase in BDNF, then all you need to do is sprint. And these sprints are like 30-second sprints. And so same thing we talked about in our Health Accelerator Challenge last night. When you're doing things that are really good for your mitochondria, really good for the longevity pathways, they're also going to be really good for the brain. So I thought that was kind of an interesting study. If you think of the exercise benefits, this goes beyond just like, hey, I feel really good. But if we're talking about BDNF specifically, here's a study where they took 40 male students, no history of physical illness, from middle school, and these are kids essentially, and they were randomly assigned to low, moderate, or high intensity treadmill exercising, or a stretching group. And the exercise was performed 4 times per week for 12 weeks. And they looked at body composition, BDNF levels, insulin-like growth factor 1 levels, cortisol levels, and working memory were all assessed. And so they're looking at all these pathways. And what they found is that the high intensity exercise group showed a significant increase in BDNF at rest concentration. They also found better levels of IGF-1, cortisol, and working memory. And so that was, kind of the high intensity. They said, they got really amazing results. They also found for resting brain derived neurotrophic factor, the high intensity group showed more significant increase compared to the low intensity. So if you're thinking about doing just low intensity aerobics or stretching, you're not going to get the same type of BDNF is what they surmised from this. And they also found that the working memory was significantly increased for the high intensity group compared to the low intensity or even the moderate intensity and stretching group. So what do you get out of that study, Cade? I mean, if you think about it, if you have to choose between high and low, and if you're just going for BDNF, there might be some evidence here.
Yeah. It looks like that higher intensity definitely is where you got to be.
Yeah, and I think it's fun, and this is where what we talked about last night is doing some moderate exercise really good for your body, good for your brain. Don't mistake that. But if you can just throw in these bursts of high intensity, it doesn't need to be a lot. But that's where you can get the most benefits, for the brain specifically for BDNF. And so hopefully this, gives you guys just some perspective, because we want you to have super healthy brains. Some of the things that add fuel to the BDNF, believe it or not, is coffee. That can really help, especially if you add some L-theanine to it, add some collagen. That can help. Blueberries, there's different herbs like cordyceps that's been proven to increase BDNF. And then, I mentioned the peptide IGF-1, the other peptide that I love, and I don't know if you took this one this morning, Cade, you did the Selenk, which is helpful for BDNF, but one that's even more powerful for this pathway specifically is dihexa. And so did you take the dihexa capsule that was in there next to the Selenk? You probably just missed all these goodies. I mean, you could have just been swimming in peptides this morning.
I should have. I didn't want to take your doses or your batch too much. I already still enough.
Well, I appreciate the sensitivity, but there's plenty to go around. But yeah, cordyceps, if you use cordyceps with dihexa, what you'll find is lower brain inflammation, improvements of BDNF, new nerve cell formation, like neurotransmitter status seems to be improved, just better memory and cognition overall. So we're going to have dihexa nasal spray. VPI is just making it, because it's been used topically or orally, but now they're making a dihexa nasal spray. So Go Wellness will be one of the first rollouts of their new formulation. So I'm excited for it.
Love it.
Yes.
Very cool.
So the other area of the brain that I wanted to touch on briefly before we kind of wrap things up is is just how pain impacts the brain. So we talked about hormones and how hormones impact the brain, and then, talking about ways you can maximize hormonal health without using exogenous hormones. And that's where kisspectin, gonadotropin can be really impactful, even in clomiphene, which, many times we're using that. But the other thing is pain, and pain. There's an interesting study where they found that that about 50% of people with chronic pain end up with depression. And so I think many of you on here know what it feels like to have chronic pain. And so one of the peptides that has been shown to be incredibly powerful and effective for pain is ARA290. And this peptide was designed to imitate some of the repair receptors in the tissue. And so not only does it help with the opiate growth factors in the brain, so it's a way that we can help some of our patients get off from like opiates, but it actually helps stimulate the small muscle fibers for neuropathy. And so ARA290, there's very interesting studies with type 2 diabetes with painful neuropathy. And some of the clinical trials showed that when compared against the placebo, administering ARA290 for 28 days, there's no potential safety issues, but they noticed that there was an overall lowering of hemoglobin A1C, the proprioception as far as like the pain levels of the painful neuropathy patients, the type 2 diabetes neuropathy, that was lessened by about 60%. And they also found that those motor pathways started to regenerate. So ARA290, it wasn't just symptomatic, it actually had, kind of a systemic long-term impact. And so ARA290 is one that I love because it does have some properties for improving the kidney pathways, which means you're going to have a little better endurance, better mineral transportation, especially if you have, if you are kind of you push yourself pretty hard. Just having the electrolytes being moved at the right place at the right time can really be beneficial. Cade, have you tried ARA290 yet?
That's another one that I just haven't ordered yet.
We just need to get you in this great program we have called the Accelerate Wellness. And we take you through 3 phases: the reset, the recharge, and the restore. And you'll feel like a new man. But
oh yeah. Well, I've gone through reset, and I've done like, 3 or 4 different resets. I've gone through all the content on the recharge. I've just been following kind of my own intuition on my peptides rather than following exactly what the peptide recommendations during those phases are. And so that's why I've missed a few of those. I got to get on it. Yeah,
I think intuition is great. It's fun. But there's some things that get missed typically.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, but ARA290 is powerful because, if you think about pain, like more people live with pain, chronic pain, than cancer, heart disease, and diabetes combined. And so ARA290 has been one of those therapies that help people pop out of that. We also use some low dose naltrexone. That's also been shown really to be effective, especially with autoimmunity. But yeah, ARA290 would be one of those areas. If you use Selenk and ARA290, because Selenk also, there's been studies where they found that participants' tolerance to pain was improved, and specifically patients who have had issues with pain where it created anxiety and depression. That's where Selenk can be really empowering. So for the brain, what happens when we're in pain is our brains, it's like a battery, and everything just starts to diminish. And so by replenishing your brain with some of these peptides, you get, you just feel so much better. So I think, to wrap it up today, if we said, okay, well, how can you create brain health that will create the best next decade of your life? Because nobody wants to get to 10 years from now and say, oh, my brain doesn't work and I feel amazing. I can climb Timpanogos, but I forget I haven't forgot that I climbed it. Number one thing we talked about today, get your hormones corrected. And that requires, gut, liver. There's so many things that go into it. But one of the things you want to look at instead of using exogenous hormones is consider stimulating the luteinizing and follicular stimulating hormone pathways. And that's where kispectin, gonadorelin, even enclomiphene can be really helpful. And then second thing we talked about is increase your BDNF. That's where the peptides IGF-1 can be really powerful. You can also use dihexa. Selenk is a dual. It works, not only to improve BDNF, but you can also use Selenk in pain. So make sure you're getting rid of any joint pain. We don't realize what that does to the brain, but there's been studies where they've taken patients who have chronic low back pain, and they've seen that dementia shows up about 5 to 10 years earlier in patients who have chronic low back pain. I haven't seen it with other pain in the body, but some of the scientists say that they hypothesize that if it's low back, you can have some other kind of chronic pain that does cause more degeneration of the brain earlier and earlier. So one of the best ways you can protect your brain is get rid of the pain. So, all right. So hopefully you guys enjoyed today. Really appreciate you being part of our community. We will. You're probably noticing we're now releasing more podcasts. We're trying to release a couple a week based on some of the feedback we've received, and you guys, I really appreciate the great feedback and the great community that we have here. So we'll keep bringing you great content. Cade, any final words of wisdom before we part?
Yeah, just thank you everybody for joining us. Don't forget, we have the holiday special. That is $100 off functional blood chemistry review, or functional blood chemistry. You get the panel as well as functional expert review. That is $100 off for you or a loved one. Get a gift for them. So give us a call, 801-582-2011. You can also text us, and we'll get you all set up and taken care of there. So we appreciate you, love you. We'll be back same time, same place next week for this podcast, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel and get our continuous podcasts and everything on there, or just subscribe on iTunes as well. Thanks a lot. We'll see everybody.
Bye-bye.